Hi everyone, this is my Module 5 video looking at accessibility. The two course resources that I'm going to be looking at is Google Slides and Google Sites. Now I know from watching videos online, checking out some other classmates' videos, Google Slides does not have a lot of different accessibility like add-ons and functions that you can use to analyze. They do have a few things up here, checking out the speech function, and they do have some add-ons that you can download and add to your slides that do help with accessibility, like the speech reader function. But other than that, there really isn't too many ways to analyze what you're doing. There's, like I said, add-ons that you can add, but they don't help you analyze what you currently have. On the Google website, though, they do have a document here that I found where it says how to make your document or presentation more accessible. And a lot of their recommendations line up with the guidelines that were in the handbook. So it talks about including alt text, using tables for data. This was one I did want to mention because I know a lot of people use Google Slides, is they talk about using the commenting features instead of writing notes within the text of your document or presentation. So when people use screen readers, it jumps to the comments, and they can do that using the keyboard shortcut. So if there's something important or something that you want to suggest, it has you using the comment feature, and it makes it, more accessible for everybody. And then it talks about checking for high color contrast, using the informative link text, checking text size and alignment, using text to support formatting. So it talks about, they can't, speech readers or screen readers, do not notice things like bold-faced or highlighting or different colored text. So it says about using important in front of certain sentences or words, depending on what you are trying to get across to the students. It talks about using numbered and bulleted lists, using headings, navigation landmarks, so like page numbers and headers and footers. When you present the slides, you have captions on them, and then how to share your presentation. So I thought this was very helpful, and they also have one for Google Sites, and I found this just by typing in how to make my presentation more accessible. So like I said, this really related to the guidelines. So after looking at all of this, I'm almost embarrassed to show my PowerPoint presentation because it is probably the farthest from accessible that I didn't know about prior to this module. So with my PowerPoint presentation, this was one that I did on a whole group Google Meet session. And we were learning about Duke Ellington for Black History Month. And so I found a worksheet online that I ended up just screenshotting and adding the screenshots to the Google Slides. So what we did is we read it out loud together. Now, if this would have been an assignment where I would have had the students do this on their own, I would have gone through and recorded myself reading the story and put in recordings on the slides. I do that for anything that's individual. But for this one, I did not, just because I knew we were going to be reading it together. So then farther down, I again took screenshots of questions, and all they had to do was drag what they thought the answer was over using a red circle. That's for a couple slides. And then down here, they typed in the box for a timeline. And then on this slide, they had a question that they responded to. And on the last slide, I embedded a YouTube video, which was a reading of a book about Duke Ellington. So this was what it looks like on Google Slides. And prior to this module, I thought, okay, this is great. All the kids can access it. They can read it. They can listen to it. As far as answering questions, they could drag those over and then, type in the text box and watch the video. But then once I downloaded it to PowerPoint to check out the outline view, I realized that it is, like I said, the farthest from accessible. So in outline view, you can see here, it has the title page, who was Duke Ellington, but then slides 2 through 9, it has nothing. So if a student was using a screen reader, they would not have anything on screen or on slides 2 through 9. On slide 10, it does have the question, Why do you think it is important to learn about Duke Ellington? And then the type here section. And then on slide 11, where the video is, it does not have anything. So with this one, there's so many things that I would need to change that were mentioned in the guidelines and were mentioned in the chapter and on the online kind of like help desk form that I found through Google. So I would need to go through and add headings. I would need to figure out a different way to display the text for the students, as well as embedding the video, so that it came up with a link that had, like it said, a meaningful link. The other thing that I would need to figure out would be answering the multiple choice questions. And that's kind of where I'm a little stuck. I use Google Slides a lot, and I'm hoping that I can kind of come up with a way to incorporate multiple choice questions that are accessible on Google Slides. So some of the things that I started to change, I made a copy of it and I started this new slide with a heading, and then I actually went through and retyped instead of just copying and pasting the screenshot. So I made sure to use headings, and then I put a white box behind it so that it's more stands out more, the black text against the white background. So that was one thing that I did do differently. The other thing that I changed just to try and play around with it was I made the question. This was down here originally on the screenshot. So I put question 1, what type of genre is this reading? And then I did the multiple choice this way. And this again is where I was stuck, because I typically would have my students drag like the answer over using a shape or a circle, but I'm not sure what the best answer is to make it the most accessible for all students. Would it be dragging a shape over? Would it be typing the answer, like have a text box that they type the answer in? So that's kind of where I would love suggestions on how to make this more accessible for all students. As far as pictures, there is only a few pictures in the story, so I would be able to copy that and add alt text to it, just describing what is in the picture so that the screen reader can include that. So that's kind of my analysis of Google Slides. Like I said, prior to this, I thought that what I had was okay, and I really appreciate the readings and all of everybody's feedback that they're giving on other websites and documents, because that's helped me really evaluate how to make things more accessible for all students. The next one that I'm going to look at is Google Sites. This one I was a little bit better with as far as accessibility goes. So I have a science website that I use with my students. This is just a place that students can go for enrichment that I have posted. I use this a lot in the spring with my students, and then continued it because my students really liked, that aspect of the enrichment side of things on our Google Classroom. The thing about Google Sites is it is very user-friendly because they don't give you a lot of choices when editing. And the reason behind this, as I've done my research and watched videos, is because everything that they do is with accessibility in mind. So they don't let you change a lot of font colors. They only give you a few options to choose from. When you're choosing the layout, it doesn't let you change the font size because it fits it to whatever computer or device the individual is using. And with the way they lay it out with all of the different headings is for the purpose of a screen reader. So whenever I was doing my research about how accessible Google Sites can be, it did mention about how the way it is laid out is for the purpose of a screen reader. So this is what my site looks like. This is just the front. I don't have a numbered or bulleted list here just because it is only one sentence. But then if I go over to my space launch, this is changed, the space launch here. When you're in editing view, it will say adjusting for readability. So it's making sure that the font that you chose or the color that you chose does work, and it will even change it for you depending on what you choose. For this, everything has a heading on it. So with the reader, it would, look at the heading and then look at the space or the paragraph below it. I don't have alt text though on any of my pictures. So that is something new that I would need to go back through and need to add for all of my images. In this, I've also embedded videos that are from YouTube. And with this one, what I would need to do is I would need to go back and check that they have closed captioning on the videos. That is not something that I have checked for prior to this module. So I would need to go back through and just double check that they do have closed captioning. And if they don't, I would need to replace them with a video that does. So again, I just have more pictures down here. So I would include alt text with those images. The next tab up here is experiments, and these are videos that I recorded myself for my students in the spring, and I know that there is not closed captioning on those. So this is something that I would need to go back through and make sure that I have a transcript and closed captioning for. Again, I would need to add alt text. As far as some of the paragraphs, I could see adding bulleted points for things like this. So for certain ones, I have to include ingredients for certain experiments. So I could see adding steps or bulleted lists to make this more accessible for all. With this one, I did include a link to the story, and it does have meaningful text, so they know that it's Bartholomew and the Oobleck read aloud. So that is one area that I did include on my Google Sites. Again, with the soda rockets, and there's paragraphs below, I would just need to make sure that anywhere I could put a bulleted list or a numbered list, I would include that just to make it a little bit more accessible. So the other one is just virtual field trips. These are just videos with a heading. I think it would be helpful to include a little bit more of a description under each heading so the students know what they are, getting ready to watch, or if they, are looking for a specific video. And same thing on the Caterpillar project. I need to add alt text. I do have captions on some of the pictures, but I would need to add text to them so they know what they're looking at. And then same thing down here. There's different headings and different formats that are created through sites in order to make it more accessible. Under the editing feature, so that was the preview, but if I would go to edit it, this is where they have some of the features like adjusting for readability, or if you would change, like this is down here, it comes up, it says adjust for readability. So that's what it does, or it says remove it. So that's just an example of one way that Google Sites is using accessibility and keeping that in mind. If you would change the color of this, it would come up with a note saying that it's subject to change depending on the readability and how it looks. So it does also come up with that when you are trying to change a font or change a color on your Google Sites. As far as the principles go, I felt like analyzing slides and sites really helped me see which principle they were touching on and were talking about. And I felt like with my Google Sites, it is multiple means of engagement and representation. So as far as the UDL principle, I think the sites are really helpful because the students can interact with them in different ways. Mine is very much just like content, but you could have them creating their own sites. You could have them, responding to different questions. You could embed different links. So I think this is a great way to represent content in a more, engaging or different way. As far as my slides go, I'll go back to my original one that was a little embarrassing. As far as slides go, again, I think this is representation, and it could even go with expression and understanding. So if I would have assigned this as an individual assignment, students could I could have it where they could respond using a Flipgrid. So down here, I ask them to write a paragraph. So maybe they want to record their response, type their response. I could, have different ways that they could express their understanding. So I think slides touches on not only the representation, but also the expression and action principle for UDL. Like I said, I am still trying to come up with ways to make things more accessible, like asking questions on a Google Slides. We use Google Slides for all of our assignments and even our math tests, which I know in the one handbook it said about how Google Slides and PowerPoint were not very accessible for math. So I'm trying to come up with other ways. So I would love to hear what other recommendations you have to make it more accessible for all students.